Hello everyone and welcome back to another math video. Today we're going to be looking at how do you write an equation for a parallel or perpendicular line. So similar to this problem that you see up on the screen, they give you some info and they want, a parallel or perpendicular line and they want you to write an equation. Just a reminder, this is the full lesson version, so we're going to go step by step with a bunch of examples. If you'd like the short version where we just cover the main ideas, I will link that in the description below. Before attempting this lesson, you should already be familiar with the slopes of parallel and perpendicular lines. You should know about how to get slopes and intercepts from equations, and you should know how to write equations using point slope. If you'd like refreshers on any of those topics, I will link them in the description. So here's our problem. So it says the equation of line C is this. All right, so line C, and they give us this equation. And then they tell us line D is perpendicular. So we know that they're related because they are perpendicular. Cool. And passes through -1, 1. So we know that this hits -1 and 1. What is the equation for line D? All right, so for line D, right, we have a point. What we need is a slope, right? Because with a slope and a point, we can definitely do something. So we're going to get the slope from over here, all right? Because the slope of line C is 1/8, right? We should be familiar with slope-intercept form. And now, because they are perpendicular lines, because they're perpendicular, we know that we need the negative reciprocal of that, which means that the slope for line D is going to be -8. All right, we already covered negative reciprocals and yada, yada, yada. So now that we have a point and a slope, we're going to use point slope form. So again, we should already be familiar with that. We plug in, so we have y minus 1 equals -8 parentheses x minus -1. And we need to put it in slope-intercept form. So now we just simplify. We're going to distribute. So now we have y minus 1 equals -8x minus 8. The last step is to add 1 on both sides. And so our final answer is y equals -8x minus 7, final answer. All right, here's our cool clock for today, which means that it's time for you to practice what you just learned. Go ahead and pause the video and try these two problems on your own. And when you're ready, you can unpause the video and we'll check your answers. Okay, now that you've had time to work these problems, let's check your solutions. All right, for the first problem here is the work, and you should have ended up with a final answer of y equals 9/4x minus 7/4. For the second problem, hopefully we noticed that they switched it on us and they said that they were a parallel, which means they have the same slope, right? Same slope. And so your final answer should have been y equals -3/4 x minus 7/2. Now for this problem, hopefully we recognize that this is already in point slope form. So line U, okay, is already in point slope form. So we should be able to look at that and say, oh, okay, the number in front of the parentheses is my slope. So therefore the slope is -4/5. You could also solve that. I will show that right now. All right, and so there's the solution if you put it in y equals form, and you'll notice that we end up with the same slope. And now for the other line that they give us, line V, okay, they are parallel, which means that these slopes will be exactly the same, right? So this slope will also be -4/5. And now we have our point, and now we just do what we did before, plug in our numbers, and solve. Okay, change this to a plus. And let's go ahead and distribute as well. Minus plus 28/5. Now we do -6 on both sides. And we end up with, all right, and here is the final answer. So pay attention to what form you start the problem with. All right, it's time for you to practice what you just learned. Go ahead and pause the video and try these two problems on your own. And when you're ready, you can unpause the video and we'll check your answers. Okay, now that you've had time to work these problems, let's check your solutions. All right, for the first problem, you should have ended up with y equals 5/7 x minus 4/7. Here's the work. And for the second problem, here is the work. You should have ended up with y equals -1/2 x plus 10. All right, for this last type of problem, it's not in slope-intercept, it's not in point-slope, which means that you have to actually move it around and solve for the y. So we need to get the y by itself, so we're going to do -2x on both sides. Now we have -3y equals 9 minus 2x. Then we need to divide by -3, divide everything by -3. We end up with y equals -3 plus 2/3 x. And so now that it's in y equals form, remember the number in front of the x is your slope, which means the slope of this is now 2/3. And so our other line, which is w, is perpendicular, so we need to flip it and opposite it. So this would be a slope of -3/2, and our point is 2, 2. And now we just plug stuff into point slope and solve. Solving all the way down. Going fast here because, again, we should know how to do this at this point. And here is the final answer. All right, it's time to practice this last type of problem. Go ahead and pause the video and try these two problems on your own. And when you're ready, you can unpause the video and we'll check your answers. Okay, now that you've had time to work these problems, let's check your answers. Okay, for the first problem, here is your work, and you should have ended up with y equals -5x plus 5. For the second problem, here is the work, and you should have ended up with y equals -1x or just -x minus 3. Had to be super careful with solving this with the -1, so hopefully we were careful there. And other than that, that is it for today. I hope you all have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.